Hello everyone, thanks for coming back to my channel. I appreciate any of you guys making comments and liking my videos. I really appreciate it. I like to engage with my subscribers. If you do subscribe, I appreciate it. Thank you. Anyway, I hope you like these examples. I found them on my computer from the time when I had the 100 to 400 Mark II Canon lens. I know some of you guys don't agree with my assessment and my test that I did, and it's possible other cameras on the actual lens do operate better than my camera did. Anyway, have a look at the examples, let me know what you think, and thanks for watching. Hello and welcome to another video, and this time it's regarding the 100 to 400 Mark II lens. In this video I want to basically go through the quality of the lens rather than discuss the disappointing autofocus speed on the 7D. Keep in mind that it will probably operate a lot faster in terms of autofocus speed on more higher end bodies, or newer bodies for that matter. So let's just zoom in and have a look at this picture. But first let's look at the data. 164mm at ISO 400 at 5.6. So let's zoom in. 100%, good detail. 200%, just start to lose a bit of detail, and that's at 300%. Apologies that the pictures are medium raw settings, not high settings, unfortunately. Didn't realise that at the time, but they are 10 megapixel pictures, so they should be usable. Right, the next one, let's have a look at the image data. 400mm ISO 800 f8. Let's zoom in and have a look. 100%, still good detail at 100%. 200%, we start to see some pixelization, and 300%. Move on to the next image. Here's another bird. Get the info. 400mm ISO 400 f8. Let's zoom in. 100%. 200%, 300%. Next image. Here's a nice flying duck. Let's have a look at the image data. That's 360mm, ISO 400 5.6. So let's zoom in now. 100%. 200%, 300%. Next image. $100mm ISO 800 f8. Let's zoom in. 100%. Does seem to lose some detail. Doesn't seem to be as sharp as it should be. Let's just take another look at the data. Running at 1/25 of a second, should be fast enough at 100mm. Remember, the camera lens does have 4 stops of IS. 200%, 300%. Next image. See some fungus here. The image data, 40th of a second, so it's quite low. 400mm ISO 800 f8. Doesn't seem as sharp as it could be even at f8. 200%, 300%. But we are seeing pixelization now. You can see some tiny squares. That's because it's set to medium settings rather than high settings. Right, next picture. Found this in the Yorkshire Sculpture Park. It's just basically sculpture, probably based on something from Greece. So let's just have a look at the data for the image. 214mm, f8, ISO 800. %, looks fairly good. 200%, 300%. Next image. This is part of the review I did, and I did some test shots. So let's just zoom into this image so you guys can have a look. But before we do that, let's have a look at the file settings. 400mm. Unfortunately, it is ISO 6400. Do apologise. f8. 50%. Good amount of detail. 100%. So it looks pretty good. 200%. 300%. Obviously, it is medium settings on the camera. Next image. Let's have a look at the file info. 400mm, 400 ISO, 5.6. Again, camera set to medium settings. Let's zoom in there. So it looks pretty good at 50%. 100%. 200%. 300%. Move on to the next image. Right, at this point I decided to go into Jessop's in Meadowhall in Sheffield and get another copy of the lens, the 100-400 Mark II lens, and test it out just to make sure the one I was testing at home wasn't anything wrong with it basically, and it just performed the same basically. So let's zoom in a little bit. 100%, 200%, could be better, 300%. So what was the data on that? ISO 400, 400mm, 30th of a second, 5.6. So it was slow shutter speed, so it could be why it's a little bit shaky there. The next image, let's have a look at the image data for that. 100mm, ISO 250, 4.5. I tried to get as much out of focus as I could to demonstrate how good it is at throwing the background out of focus. 100%. Doesn't look that sharp if I'm honest. Let's just have a look what that setting was. Well, it is 200th of a sec, 2000th of a second, sorry. So it should have been a lot better than that. I would have expected it to be better than that. 200%, 300%. Okay, move on to the next image. Okay, this is the point where I managed to get a nice squirrel picture. It's not easy to get close to wildlife with a lens that's only 400mm. Now, keep in mind with the 7D there will be a crop factor on there, making it 640mm. So let's just have a look at this image in more detail. 50%, 100%. Still looks nice. 200%. 300%. Let's just have a look at that image data. 400mm, ISO 400, 5.6. Have a look at the next image. Similar, but obviously you can tell about the detail in this sort of face. 100%. 200%. Still looks pretty good even for 200%. I think the Canon lens probably does better than normal other lenses out there when it's focusing quite close to something. And we were relatively quite close to these squirrels at the time. 300%. And just to confirm the image data on that. Thousandth of a second, 5.6, ISO 400, 400mm. And the last one, the best till last, because it's a nice picture this. Let's just have a look at the image data first. 400mm, 1600 a second for shutter speed, f8, ISO 400. Let's just zoom in there. At 50%. 100%. I think at 100% we're starting to lose a bit of detail, but it's still usable. I still think you could print that. 200%. Obviously, with it being set to medium, cropping in is a bit of a problem sometimes. Okay, and 300%. So, I just wanted to give you some examples from the Canon 100 to 400 Mark II lens on a 7D crop factor camera. Times that by 1.6, that should give you 640mm at the long end. I hope this video has been helpful, and thank you for watching. Hello everyone, and thanks for watching my video. In this little video I'm just going to show you some examples of what the Sigma 150 to 600 contemporary lens can do. Have a look, tell me what you think in the comments. I appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel because it does help, and I hope you enjoy the samples I have for you to have a look at. So thank you for watching. Hello everyone, and thanks for coming and listening to this and watching this video. Anyway, in this video I'm going to go through some examples that I've got from the 150 to 600 contemporary Sigma lens. These pictures are a mixture probably from my 7D, the original one, and a second-hand 1D Mark III. So obviously there'll be a little bit of a mixture there, but a lot of people have commented on the 150 to 600 and said the lens is not sharp. I disagree with that. If any of you guys out there who've got the sport version of this lens, obviously this will apply to you as well, because a lot of these images you'll be able to achieve with that lens, if not a little bit better at the long end, the 600mm, 500 to 600mm end. But check out my other video regarding my tests between all three, the 150 to 600 lenses. So without further ado, let's go through these examples. So here we have a squirrel, literally about 3 meters away, so I was really close. So let's just have a look at the data for the actual picture. 374mm, 6.3, ISO 1600. You are always going to be pushing the ISO on this lens, unfortunately, due to the fact that it doesn't let a lot of light in. That's a disadvantage to it. But if you've got a good camera, it should be fine. So, without further ado, that's a Mark III, by the way. 1D Mark III. So let's zoom in. 50%. 100%. Personally, I think 100% is more than enough for this lens. You see, the thing is with the 150 to 600 Sigma zoom lens is unlike with the Canon 100 to 400, where you will always have to crop your image. You don't always have to crop, so you know, this might be too big and you might want to zoom out a little bit, you know. So sometimes zooming in, you don't need to really. So obviously cropping isn't a necessary evil, basically. So let's have a look at the next image. Similar sort of picture. The file data, 1D Mark III, ISO 800, f8. We was running quite slow at the shutter speed at 50th a second at 324mm. Again, it is a 7D, so I just times these millimeters by 1.6 to give you a true magnification ratio. So let's zoom in. 50%, 100%, definitely usable at 100%, I think. 200%. 200%, because it's only 10 megapixel camera, you are starting to see some pixelization. 300%. Next picture. A nice mouse with a nut. So let's have a look at the data for the picture. 1D Mark III, 6.3, ISO 3200, so we're really pushing that ISO on this camera. 50%. I don't think you need to zoom in any more than that really, if you were to print this out. 100%, he's starting to lose a bit. 200%, I won't say usable. 300%. So the next image, which is that Star Trek model that I did that test on, where I said the Sigma Contemporary is a bit sharper than the Tamron 150 to 600. So let's just have a look at the data. So this is a 7D, 600mm, f8, ISO 400. We were on a tripod, but even so, it's 13th of a second. Let's zoom in. 50%. 100%. Now at this point, when we had the Tamron lens on, it was significantly softer than this. That's why I went for this lens in the end. 200%. 300%. Right, the next one. Right, some nice flowers in a cemetery. Let's just check on the details. 7D, 6.3, ISO 400. 100%, 200%, 300%. We're on the medium raw settings, so it is 10 megapixel we're running at. .600mm, ISO 800, f8, 7D. 100%. think there's a bit of motion there. 200%, 300%. Right, next image. Let's have a look at the picture data. 267mm f8 ISO 1600, so we're pushing the ISO a little bit. On this particular image 7D, it's actually on high settings, so maybe this will give you more of an idea of how good it is at the highest resolution, which I think is either 18 or 19 megapixels on the 7D. Don't quote me on that though. So let's just have a look. 50%, 100%. So like I said, it's quite dark, so I had to push the ISO on this. 200%, 300%. That's interesting. That is very interesting. I don't know if you guys can see this in the picture, but if you can see the pixelization squares, which are basically the pixels on the sensor, they're only slightly smaller than having it on medium settings or from a 10 megapixel camera. So cropping isn't always an option. Sometimes it's better to have the ability to zoom in with an optical lens, because if you do crop, and a lot of people do crop, you're losing a lot of information when you crop. So preference is always zoom in if you can. And in circumstances like that, I would say a 600mm lens is probably better than a 400mm lens in most situations. So let's have a look at the next picture. .7D, it's on the high settings again, 1600 ISO, 6.3, 320th of a second. You always struggle with the shutter when it's quite dark. %, 200%, 300%. Right, the next image. There's another one of those flying birds that I got at the local Yorkshire Sculpture Park. Maybe if someone would like to make a comment and tell me what the bird's called, I keep forgetting. Right, it's 562mm, ISO 800, f8, 3200 for a second. 7D, it's set to the high settings again as well. So hopefully this will give us an indication of how sharp the picture is. 100%. I would say 100% this picture is certainly printable at a large size. 200%, 300%. Right, let's move on to the next image. Here will the Leeds and Bradford Airport. So let's look at the file details. 600mm, 500th of a second, f8, ISO 400. 7D, again it's on high settings, the camera. So let's just pick a section. 100%, 200%, 300. Just come out that a little bit. Right, the next image. Image data. 468mm, f22, ISO 250th and 125th of a second. Again, it's set to high settings. No, sorry, it's set to medium settings. This picture is. 100%, 200%, 300%. Right, the next picture, the file information is 500 per second f8, ISO 100, so it was a very sunny day. Focal length 150 millimeters, 7D, set to medium settings. So we should have a very clean image, because the lens does perform really well between 150 and 300 millimeters. It does okay, fairly well at 500 millimeters. Tends to struggle a little bit at 600 millimeters. That's where the sport comes into its own. 100%. 200%. 300%. Right, next image. Again at the airport. 1000th per second f8, ISO 320, 600 millimeters. 7D, set to medium camera settings. 100%. 200%. 300%. Okay, we have the last picture here. Let's get the file info on this. Right, it's set to high settings on the 7D. 600 millimeters, ISO 1600, 6.3, 1000th per second. All these pictures have not been manually processed or had any sort of noise reduction added to them. So they are as they should be. So let's have a look. 50%. Would you really want to crop that picture at all? It's really clear and nice. I think it's probably the sharpest here. Could do with a bit more sharper here, unfortunately. Let's zoom in at 100%. Definitely quite nice. I don't think there would be a reason to zoom in or crop at 100%, but let's keep going. 200%. 300%. So, I hope you enjoyed these examples. I just wanted to showcase the Sigma 150 to 600 contemporary lens. Despite what some people are saying, I think it's a really nice lens, and if it comes to distance, it probably beats the Canon 100 to 400 Mark II lens, because cropping sometimes isn't always an option. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and have a nice day. Bye bye. Hello everyone, and thanks for watching again. Right, there's been a lot of debate which is better, the Canon 100 to 400 Mark II lens, or the Sigma 150 to 600 contemporary or sport, or even the Tamron 150 to 600. So I'm going to do a little bit of a contest basically. I've got some examples for you to have a look at, some Canon photos from the 100 to 400 Mark II lens, and some from the 150 to 600 contemporary lens. In my opinion, the contemporary is just as good as the sport, to be honest. If you're really interested about what's the difference between the contemporary and the sport, here are the basics. I'm not going to go into all the technical jargon about elements and coatings and all that sort of thing. I think most people just want the basics, so I'll tell you. The Sport is weather sealed, heavy, built like a tank, and is slightly sharper, between 500 and 600 millimeters. The Contemporary is 1 kilogram lighter. It's all made out of plastic instead of metal, like the Sport is, and it's pretty good up to 500 millimeters. It's probably at its sharpest between 150 and 300 millimeters, and up to 500 millimeters probably. But in terms of sharpness between both lenses, both the Sigma and the Contemporary, there's not a lot in it really. I've tried cropping in and having a look at the images by 200%. There's not a lot in it. So I just wanted to do another video for you guys to see some samples, and it's up to you to make your mind up which you prefer. Thank you. Bye bye. Hello everyone, and thanks for coming to my video. I think anyone who does photography, and does telephoto photography in particular, who can't afford the Canon or the Nikon primes because they're extremely expensive, have gone for the cheaper alternatives such as the zooms with obviously a variable aperture. I think a lot of people are considering the 100 to 400 Mark II Canon lens versus the Sigma 150 to 600 Contemporary, Sport, and also the Tamron version. For you guys in the Nikon world, you're probably wondering how it stacks up against the 200 to 500 lens. So this video is all about showing you some examples. It's not entirely scientific, I do apologise, but I hope this will give you an idea of the quality of the results you can get from both lenses. If you're wondering about the Contemporary versus the Sport, which is better, in my opinion, they're as good as each other. The only advantage to the Sport is it's well, it's a kilogram heavier first of all, so that's a disadvantage. But the advantage is it's weather sealed, and at between 500 and 600 millimeters, it's a little bit sharper than the Contemporary. So without further ado, I'll show you the images. They're not entirely the same for each lens because I had each lens at a different point in time, but I just wanted to go through them so you guys can have a look at the examples and make your own mind up. My preference is always to go for a longer telephoto lens than a shorter one because cropping isn't always an option. So without further ado, let's have a look. Let's have a look at the metadata for this picture. Right, 324 millimeters, f8, ISO 800. So that is set to camera raw medium settings on the 1D Mark III. So let's zoom in a little bit. 50%, 100%, 200%. Right, the next one is a Canon picture from the 100 to 400 Mark II lens. This picture you're seeing at the moment is obviously from the Contemporary 150 to 600. So this is the Canon picture. Let's have a look at the data. 400 millimeters, 5.6, ISO 400. So it may be a bit cleaner, but it still is further away. 50%, 100%, 200%. Now it is on medium settings, so you can see pixelization. So let's come out a little bit. Right, let's come out a little bit so we don't see any sort of pixelization because it is at 10 megapixels. Okay, and let's try and get a similar framing picture with the Sigma lens. I would say 66% gets you roughly 100% of what the Canon can produce. But is it sharper? That's the question. The choice is yours. You make your own mind up. It's a close one. I would have to say the Canon has the edge. But there is a difference on the Sigma one. You can zoom into 100% with before pixelization. With the Canon one, if you try going into 200%, you can't. So it's close. Right, the next image. This is on the Sigma. So let's just have a look at the data. 600mm. Obviously it's set to medium settings on the camera. 7D. ISO 400. f8. So let us zoom in. 50%. 100%. 200%. But at that point we can see some pixels there. But if we zoom out to 100%, it looks pretty good. So let's have a look at the next image, which is on the Canon lens. That's ISO 400, 5.6, 400mm. Let's zoom in. 100%. 200% we start to see pixelization, so we would need to zoom out a little bit to get the equivalent. And I would say the results are probably comparable. The choice is yours, which you prefer. Clearly, the higher the resolution of your camera, the more you can actually crop. So that's the Sigma lens, that's the Canon lens. Okay, the next picture is on the Sigma. (600mm), ISO 1600, the 7D, 6.3 aperture. Right, let's zoom in. 50%. It's a very good picture, this. I think the focus could have been better because it's here when it needs to be on the eye. 100%, and it's okay. Next image, which is obviously slightly different. Let's have a look at the metadata. 164mm, ISO 400, f5.6, 7D. Let's have a look. (100%), 200%. Okay, the next image. which is a Sigma picture, on the Sigma lens I mean. Right, the data is 562 millimeters, 3200 of a second, f8, ISO 800. We're actually on high settings here, so it might not be a fair comparison because the Canon one is on medium settings. So let's click OK and zoom in. 100%. So let's have a look at the information on this lens. 562 millimeters, ISO 800, f8, 3200 of a second, 7D. It's set to its high settings though, so in a fair comparison with the Canon, I believe. Well, let's zoom in. 100%, which is, that's 100%, and 200%. But as I said, it is set to high settings, so really it's not usable at that, but that's usable. So have a look at the Canon one, which is just as nice a picture. First of all, let's have a look what the settings are. Canon 7D, this is set to medium settings, so in a fair comparison to the Sigma picture. 400mm, f8, ISO 400, 1600th of a second. So let's have a look. 50%, 66%, 100%. Now I think most of the focus is on the wing here, unfortunately, and not on the eye. It would have been a lot better if it was, so you could have a clear indication of which is sharper. Obviously it is a bit smaller, so we could possibly zoom out on the Sigma lens to get similar magnification. So basically it's 40% out we have to come to match the Canon's sized image here when we've cropped in. So it's up to you which you think is better. Obviously it would help if there were very similar images, but it's not an easy thing to achieve with wildlife. But they're both very good images, and the Sigma is certainly capable of producing good results, as you've seen. It's up to you to make your mind up, but I certainly think the Sigma and the Canon lenses can produce good results. The choice is yours. Personally, optically speaking, the Canon picture here looks really nice. In fact, probably nicer than the Sigma one. However, the Sigma lens can focus twice as fast on the 7D. But I have seen a video of the 1DX where the autofocus speed for the Canon lens is really fast. So it might be just a choice of camera which matches the lens. Anyway, it's for you to make your mind up. I'm not here to tell you what to buy, but I hope you find this comparison helpful, and thank you for your time.